In the hidden corners of the wild, an invisible war rages, not between predators and prey, but between cells, viruses, and survival itself. Every animal carries a story written in its blood, a code of struggle against microscopic invaders. Some of these battles end quietly. Others erupt into plagues that sweep across species, reshaping entire ecosystems. Imagine lions in the Serengeti collapsing from a virus that started in dogs, or seals washing ashore in the Arctic, victims of a silent infection carried by their distant cousins. These aren't random tragedies. They are nature's experiments, teaching pathogens how to cross the line between species. Before a disease ever reaches humanity, it learns its lessons here, in the bodies of animals. The boundaries we think protect us are fragile membranes, trembling with exchange. Every infection in the wild sends ripples through the web of life. Some fade, some evolve, and some are already on their way to us. This is animal plagues, when diseases jump from animals to animals, a journey through nature's hidden epidemics and the forces shaping evolution itself. Stay until the end to uncover how these invisible wars reveal the next frontier of survival. If you believe knowledge is the best defense against the unknown, hit subscribe and join us as we uncover the truth behind the wild's deadliest secret battles. Long before humans built cities or raised livestock, the natural world was already locked in an endless exchange of infection. The first plagues didn't begin in laboratories or markets. They began in the wild, where predators shared blood with their prey, and parasites found ways to adapt to every heartbeat they touched. Viruses are among the oldest travelers on Earth. They existed before mammals, before birds, before even insects took flight. They evolved not to destroy life, but to survive through it, passing silently from one creature to another, perfecting the art of coexistence and invasion. Deep within ancient rainforests and primeval oceans, these microscopic pioneers crossed species lines long before we ever noticed. When bats brushed against monkeys and shared fruit trees, when scavengers feasted on the remains of the sick, the boundaries between species blurred, and a new infection learned to leap. Each crossing was a small victory for evolution, a test that rewrote the rules of survival. Some viruses became gentle passengers, living in harmony with their hosts. Others turned violent, consuming everything to spread faster. These ancient outbreaks shaped the immune systems of every animal alive today, from the antibodies in your bloodstream to the defenses inside a whale's heart. The story of plagues is, in truth, the story of adaptation. Every leap between species forced nature to grow smarter, faster, and more resilient. When animals infect animals, evolution accelerates. And in those moments of chaos, the blueprint for future pandemics is quietly written. Every infection has a map, a path drawn not on paper, but through fur, feathers, and breath. It begins with contact, a single moment when one animal's world overlaps with another's. A drop of saliva, a bite, a shared pool of water. These are nature's bridges, invisible but powerful. In the wilderness, those bridges are everywhere. When fruit bats feed in trees above grazing antelope, when birds migrate across continents carrying microscopic stowaways, or when predators feast on infected prey, each act of survival becomes an opportunity for disease to move. Pathogens don't respect species. They follow opportunity, temperature, blood, and chance. A virus in a bat can find a home in a pig, then in a human. A parasite in a frog can leap into fish, then to birds. The web of transmission is the true heartbeat of epidemics. Vast, interconnected, and constantly shifting with the seasons. But this web isn't random. It's shaped by behavior, environment, and evolution. The closer two species are genetically or ecologically, the easier the jump becomes. That's why dogs can pass viruses to wolves, and why primates share so many diseases with us. Still, distance doesn't guarantee safety. Climate change, deforestation, and urban sprawl push species together that would never have met before, weaving new strands in nature's network. Each contact is an experiment, a chance for mutation, a rehearsal for the next outbreak. To understand how diseases spread between animals is to glimpse the hidden machinery of life itself. A living, breathing web that connects every creature on Earth, one infection at a time. In nature's vast network of life, some animals are not victims, they're vessels. Silent carriers that hold the world's deadliest diseases without falling ill themselves. These creatures are called reservoirs, and they're the reason plagues never truly disappear. Bats, for example, harbor dozens of viruses, from coronaviruses to Nipah and Ebola, yet their bodies remain calm, unbroken by fever. Their immune systems burn hot, keeping infections under control while allowing viruses to linger, waiting for a chance to move on. Rodents, too, are masters of quiet transmission. They scurry through forests and fields, carrying bacteria like Yersinia pestis, the microbe that once unleashed the Black Death. In the water, ducks and wild geese act as living libraries of influenza strains, sharing them across continents through migration. These wild carriers are not villains. They are survivors of ancient battles. Over millennia, they've evolved to coexist with their pathogens, creating a delicate truce between invader and host. But when that balance is disturbed, when humans encroach on habitats, when climate shifts force migrations, when species mix unnaturally, that peace shatters. The virus, once contained, begins to search for a new home. Every outbreak we fear today often begins in the body of a creature that feels nothing at all. Understanding these reservoirs means tracing the origin of every modern epidemic back to the wild, where evolution and infection dance endlessly in silence. Because as long as these carriers exist, and as long as we share their planet, the potential for the next great plague will always remain alive. In the chain of infection, there are creatures that play a deadly middleman, the vectors. They do not create the disease, but they carry it, spreading it silently from one host to another. Mosquitoes are perhaps the most infamous. For millions of years, they have ferried viruses and parasites through the air, transforming every drop of blood into a potential bridge of contagion. Malaria, dengue, West Nile, and Zika, all born from mosquitoes' bite, each one reshaping ecosystems and claiming lives across continents. But mosquitoes are not alone. Ticks crawl through tall grass, carrying Lyme disease and Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. Fleas leapt between rats and humans to ignite the plague that swept across medieval Europe. Even biting flies, sandflies, and mites act as invisible couriers in nature's postal system of infection. What makes vectors truly dangerous is their subtlety. They move unnoticed, guided not by malice but by instinct, feeding, breeding, surviving. Yet each encounter leaves behind a microscopic legacy, passing from predator to prey, from wild to domestic, from forest to city. Climate change and rising temperatures now push these messengers into new territories, awakening old pathogens in places they've never been before. A single mosquito species migrating north can carry with it the spark of a new epidemic. These creatures remind us that disease doesn't always need direct contact. Sometimes it rides on wings, feet, or fur, traveling farther and faster than any predator ever could. Vectors are nature's couriers of consequence, reminding us that the smallest messengers often carry the loudest echoes of survival. Across the vast wilderness of our planet, history is written not just in fossils and bones, but in outbreaks that have reshaped entire ecosystems. In 1994, the Serengeti trembled as lions began dying one by one. Their golden bodies fell beneath the same sun that once crowned them kings. The cause was canine distemper virus, a disease that began in domestic dogs, then spread to hyenas, leopards, and finally lions. It burned through the savanna like invisible fire, proving that one species' sickness could bring another to its knees. In Australia, Tasmanian devils faced an even stranger enemy, their own faces. A contagious cancer, passed through biting, swept across their populations, erasing nearly 90% of the species. Each wound was not just an injury, but a transmission. Their survival became a race against their own biology. Far from land, the seas hold their own tragedies. In 1988, tens of thousands of seals washed ashore in Europe, victims of phocine distemper virus, another pathogen leaping through species like a spark in dry grass. Coral reefs, too, have suffered silent pandemics. Entire colonies lost to bacterial and fungal infections that spread unseen beneath the waves. Even frogs, the heartbeat of rainforests, fell victim to chytrid fungus, a microscopic killer that wiped out hundreds of amphibian species around the world. Each outbreak left more than death. It left an imprint, a genetic memory carved into evolution's code. These plagues remind us that disease is not just destruction. It is nature's brutal teacher, shaping which species adapt and which vanish forever. In the misty silence of tropical rainforests, a quiet extinction unfolded. It began without warning. Frogs simply stopped singing. Their voices, once echoing across rivers and canopies, vanished almost overnight. The cause was not pollution, poaching, or predators. It was a fungus, a microscopic killer named Batrachochytrium dendrobatidis, or chytrid fungus. It invaded through the skin, the very organ frogs used to breathe and drink. Once infected, their skin thickened, their hearts slowed, and they suffocated from within. Entire species vanished before scientists even knew they existed. From Central America to Australia, from the Andes to Madagascar, chytrid swept through like wildfire, erasing over 200 species in a few decades, the greatest disease-driven loss of biodiversity ever recorded. What made it so devastating was its reach. Chytrid didn't need predators or carriers. Water alone could spread its spores. One pond, one rainfall, one human boot carrying invisible cells was enough to start an outbreak miles away. It infected frogs, toads, salamanders, even mountain species isolated for millennia. And as it spread, it silenced the rainforest, breaking the balance of insect control, pollination, and food chains that depended on amphibians. Scientists called it the frog apocalypse, a global epidemic hidden beneath the forest floor. Even now, some populations cling to survival through genetic resistance and human intervention. But the lesson it left behind is chilling. Disease doesn't need noise or violence to change the world. Sometimes it only needs silence and time. Above us, the sky is alive with wings. Millions of migratory birds traveling thousands of miles each year, connecting continents through invisible routes. But within those graceful migrations hides one of nature's most efficient couriers of disease, avian influenza. In wild ducks, swans, and geese, the virus often causes no illness at all. They are the silent carriers, gliding across oceans and borders, spreading invisible particles of infection through their droppings and breath. What begins as a harmless passenger in wild flocks can transform, mutating into deadly strains when it reaches domestic birds. Chicken farms, dense with life, become perfect incubators. The virus amplifies, becomes more aggressive, and when wild and domestic birds meet again, the cycle restarts, stronger than before. The story of avian influenza is one of movement, not just of wings, but of evolution itself. Each migration is a chance for the virus to mix, recombine, and test new hosts. Over the decades, outbreaks have decimated bird populations across Asia, Europe, and the Americas, leaving coastlines littered with lifeless bodies. Sometimes, the virus crosses the species barrier, infecting mammals like seals, foxes, and even humans, reminding us that nature's highways in the sky are shared by all. The tragedy is that birds, the symbols of freedom and endurance, have become unwilling messengers of mutation. Their migrations are both beautiful and dangerous, a breathtaking reminder that no creature, no matter how high it flies, can escape the microscopic forces that bind all life together. Beneath the calm blue surface of the ocean lies a world constantly battling invisible plagues. In these waters, disease spreads not by air or insect, but by currents unseen, silent, unstoppable. Marine life, from coral polyps to sea stars, lives in delicate balance with microscopic organisms that can turn deadly in an instant. In the early 2010s, the Pacific coast witnessed one of the most devastating marine epidemics ever recorded: sea star wasting syndrome. Healthy starfish suddenly began melting, their arms twisting, disintegrating into white fragments. The cause was traced to a densivirus that swept across thousands of kilometers, turning vibrant coastlines into graveyards. In coral reefs, bacterial and fungal infections spread through rising temperatures and pollution, bleaching entire ecosystems and erasing habitats that once sustained a quarter of all ocean life. The ocean hides its suffering well. Carcasses sink before we ever see them, and plagues move faster than our ability to measure them. Sea turtles carry fibropapilloma tumors linked to oceanic pollution and viral infection. Dolphins and whales face outbreaks of morbillivirus that echo the distemper seen in land mammals. Each wave carries whispers of decay, proof that even the vast sea is not immune to nature's microscopic wars. The rise in temperature, the loss of coral, and the pressure of human pollution weaken the ocean's immune system, allowing old pathogens to thrive. When the sea turns sick, the entire planet feels it, because our atmosphere, our weather, and even our food depend on the life beneath those waves. The ocean breathes for Earth, and now that breath is strained. From the open sky to the crowded forests, the air itself can become a carrier of death. Invisible clouds of microbes travel with the wind, carried on dust, feathers, and breath. What once seemed like a purely human concern, airborne transmission, is in fact ancient, deeply woven into the natural history of disease. Among bats, influenza-like viruses drift through colonies that number in the millions. When these animals migrate or roost near cities, the pathogens ride with them, waiting for the right species, the right contact, the right mutation. Birds, too, have long been couriers of contagion. Avian influenza doesn't respect borders or oceans. A single flock can carry it from one continent to another, reshaping the health of entire ecosystems. In Africa's dry season, dust storms have been found to transport fungal spores thousands of miles across the Atlantic. They descend upon the Caribbean, where those same spores awaken in the lungs of unsuspecting mammals. Even microscopic algae in the sea can release toxins into the air, making coastal winds a hazard for both humans and animals. The atmosphere, once seen as pure and cleansing, is revealed to be a restless bloodstream for the planet, one that connects every species, every landscape. In this new age of mobility, air travel and wind currents merge the fate of distant populations. The same wind that cools a savanna might also carry the echo of an outbreak. In the grand web of life, no creature truly breathes alone. The air unites us, but it also binds our sicknesses together. When humans step into nature's battlefield, the outcome is never simple. Every syringe, every bait vaccine, every culling campaign sends ripples through an ecosystem far beyond what we can predict. In the 1950s, scientists introduced the myxoma virus to Australia to control an exploding rabbit population that was destroying crops. It worked too well. Within months, millions of rabbits died painful deaths, and yet nature struck back. The survivors evolved resistance, the virus weakened, and the cycle began again. A microscopic arms race between evolution and control. In Europe and North America, rabies vaccination campaigns have been hailed as public health triumphs, with oral baits dropped from planes for foxes and raccoons. But even these successes come with questions. How do we balance intervention with the natural dynamics of predator and prey? In Africa, rinderpest once devastated both cattle and wild herds. When humans finally eradicated it through mass vaccination, it was a rare, shining victory, the second disease in history wiped out after smallpox. Yet in other regions, attempts to manage wildlife diseases often blur the line between mercy and manipulation. Culling bats to prevent rabies, for example, has sometimes accelerated outbreaks by scattering infected animals. And vaccinating certain species can inadvertently shift infection pressure onto others. Every human action echoes through the chain of life. A reminder that our role is not just as healers, but as participants in a living network that resists control. The forests, the fields, the skies, they all react to our touch in ways both miraculous and mysterious. When humans intervene, we do not simply cure or contain. We become part of the disease's story. Deep inside every drop of blood, every cell, every breath, nature is running silent experiments. The laboratory is not made of steel and glass, but of flesh, time, and chance. Pathogens, viruses, bacteria, fungi are the world's most tireless scientists. They mutate, adapt, and evolve faster than any species alive. Each infection, each failed invasion, is data. Each host is a new petri dish in the endless study of survival. A virus that kills too quickly loses its chance to spread. One that lingers too long risks exposure to the immune system. So it learns balance, not by choice, but by the blind arithmetic of evolution. The Ebola virus, once burning bright and brief in remote villages, now experiments in slower, quieter forms. Influenza rearranges its genes like puzzle pieces, producing new strains that leap from wild birds to pigs to humans, rewriting its own blueprint with every season. In the wild, these microscopic minds learn from the chaos we leave behind. Deforestation drives animals closer together, giving viruses more hosts to test. Climate change shifts migration patterns, connecting species that never met before. Even the antibiotics and antivirals we use create new selective pressures, breeding tougher, smarter strains. What we call mutation is simply adaptation and fast-forward, nature's trial and error on an invisible scale. Yet within this race, there's also balance. Some pathogens evolve toward coexistence, living quietly within their hosts for millennia. Others push too far and vanish with the species they destroy. The hidden laboratories of evolution never close, and the experiments never end. It is not cruelty, not intelligence, just the raw, unfeeling logic of life trying to persist. Every creature on Earth carries within it an ancient defense system, a living memory of every battle ever fought against disease. The animal immune system is not just a biological machine. It's a code written in blood, shaped by billions of years of survival. Before there were doctors, vaccines, or antibiotics, there was immunity, the silent war fought within every cell. From insects to elephants, every species has its own strategy. Insects, though small and fragile, use a primitive yet powerful form of immunity. Their blood hardens around invaders, trapping pathogens in crystal prisons. Amphibians coat their skin with antimicrobial peptides, turning their very bodies into shields. Birds maintain high body temperatures that burn out viruses before they can take hold. And mammals, our closest allies in biology, wield the most intricate system of all, a coordinated army of cells that remember, adapt, and strike faster each time an enemy returns. Inside a lion's body, macrophages devour bacteria with precision. In dolphins, antibodies flow through blubber and bloodstream alike, forming an invisible armor. Even reptiles and fish possess immune cells strikingly similar to ours, proof that nature's defense code was perfected long before humans arrived. Yet, for all its brilliance, the immune system is not invincible. When faced with a new pathogen, one it has never seen, the body hesitates, searching its memory for a match that doesn't exist. This moment of confusion can decide the fate of a life or a species. Some animals adapt quickly, others vanish in a single outbreak. Evolution refines the code, line by line, every time a creature survives. The immune system doesn't just protect life, it records it, translating every infection into resilience, every recovery into wisdom. It is perhaps nature's most enduring form of intelligence. In the vast theater of life, some creatures seem to defy the rules of disease altogether. They are nature's superhosts, animals that harbor deadly viruses yet never fall ill themselves. Their bodies are living paradoxes, immune systems tuned to harmony instead of war. Take bats, for instance. They carry some of the most dangerous pathogens known to science: Ebola, Marburg, Nipah, even coronaviruses, yet show no signs of sickness. The secret lies in their biology. The act of flight demands such high energy that their cells evolve to suppress inflammation and tolerate viral presence. What would kill another creature barely disturbs them. Their immune systems have learned not to overreact, maintaining a calm coexistence with microbes that would devastate others. Rodents, too, hold silent partnerships with disease. Deer mice, for example, carry hantaviruses that can kill humans, yet they remain perfectly healthy. The same is true for pangolins, whose unique scales and low-stress immune response make them natural shields for certain coronaviruses. Even camels, often linked to MERS, rarely suffer from the disease they transmit. These species are not villains. They are survivors of ancient evolutionary bargains. Their bodies adapted to tolerate invaders instead of destroying them. It's a delicate peace, one that allows both host and pathogen to persist. But when humans step into this balance, hunting, trading, or encroaching, that peace fractures and the virus seeks a new home. In that transfer, what was harmless becomes catastrophic. The superhosts are reminders that disease is not always about attack and defense. Sometimes it's about coexistence. And in that quiet balance, nature hides both its wisdom and its warning. Every great epidemic, no matter how vast, begins with a single spark, one host, one contact, one moment of chance. In the wild, that first carrier is called patient zero. It could be a fruit bat landing on a mango tree, a mosquito biting two different species in the same night, or a primate venturing just a little too close to human settlements. The story of infection always starts quietly, invisible, almost innocent. Yet that first encounter can change the course of evolution itself. A virus doesn't plan, but it adapts. When it finds a new host, it tests the boundaries of survival. Will this new body sustain me or destroy me? In that instant, the pathogen rewrites its destiny, and sometimes the destiny of the entire ecosystem. Scientists studying the origins of diseases like Ebola, SARS, and Nipah trace them back to moments just like these: a droplet of saliva, a wound, or a meal shared between species. In one 1998 outbreak in Malaysia, fruit bats displaced by deforestation began feeding on fruit in pig farms. Their saliva carried the Nipah virus, which jumped to pigs, then to farmers, igniting a chain reaction that killed hundreds. The virus didn't mean to kill. It was simply searching for balance. But nature's balance had already been broken by human hands. Each time a forest is cut, each time wildlife is pushed closer to villages, we shorten the distance between patient zero and us. Pandemics are not random punishments. They are consequences of connection. The wild does not conspire against humanity. It merely responds to our presence. In the silent exchange between species, the story of every outbreak begins and sometimes ends. Epidemics don't rise from nowhere. They emerge where chaos and imbalance meet. When the climate shifts, forests fall, and species are forced together, the natural world becomes a petri dish for new diseases. Every environmental change rewrites the rules of survival. In a warming world, mosquitoes expand their range into higher altitudes, bringing malaria to mountain gorillas that once lived safe above the clouds. Rising sea temperatures awaken dormant pathogens in fish and marine mammals. Droughts drive animals to shrinking waterholes, concentrating species and their microbes into deadly proximity. The environment doesn't just host life, it directs the movement of infection. When its rhythm falters, diseases find opportunity. In Brazil's forests, yellow fever once flickered quietly among monkeys, controlled by ecology itself. But deforestation and urbanization fractured that balance, allowing mosquitoes to carry the virus into cities. In the Arctic, thawing permafrost threatens to release ancient microbes long trapped in ice, bacteria, and viruses that predate humanity itself. Across continents, pollution weakens immune systems, pesticides alter insect behavior, and plastic-filled rivers become breeding grounds for pathogens. These aren't isolated crises. They are parts of one vast, interconnected storm. When ecosystems are healthy, they act as barriers. Predators control carriers, and diversity dilutes infection. But when that web tears apart, the floodgates open. Disease moves faster, further, freer. The perfect storm is not a myth. It's the inevitable collision between environmental decay and microbial ambition. Nature is always communicating, warning through the language of outbreaks. When the Earth's balance trembles, pathogens don't just respond, they rise. Migration is one of nature's oldest rhythms, a great, eternal pulse that moves across continents and oceans. Millions of animals travel every year in search of food, warmth, and survival. Yet hidden within these breathtaking journeys are the seeds of both contagion and control. As flocks, herds, and swarms cross borders, they carry with them invisible passengers, viruses, bacteria, parasites, all hitching a ride on the winds of instinct. A single migratory bird can cross oceans, linking disease cycles between the Arctic tundra and the African savanna. In 2005, the H5N1 avian influenza strain spread along bird migration routes, revealing how nature's highways can also become corridors for global epidemics. But migration is not only a vector, it is also a filter. Animals in motion expose pathogens to stress, competition, and death, reducing infection reservoirs that might otherwise grow unchecked. Movement, paradoxically, can both spread and suppress disease. For centuries, the great migrations of wildebeest in Africa have shaped entire ecosystems, even influencing the timing of insect-borne illnesses. When their numbers plummet, the Serengeti's grasslands change, altering mosquito patterns and increasing disease transmission among other species. Whales, traveling thousands of miles through shifting ocean currents, encounter microbial communities as diverse as entire continents. Their immune systems evolve through these encounters, turning migration into a grand immunological journey. But as climate change disrupts these routes, animals arrive too early, too late, or not at all, breaking the balance that once kept diseases in check. Migration is not just movement. It is communication, exchange, and adaptation written across the planet's skin. When that movement is silenced, the world itself becomes still, and in stillness, disease finds a place to grow. Predators are often seen as villains in nature's story, the bringers of fear and death. Yet without them, the world would drown in sickness. Lions, wolves, eagles, sharks. They're not just hunters, they are nature's physicians, quietly maintaining the balance that keeps disease from spiraling out of control. When predators remove the weak, the old, and the sick, they cut infection chains before they can spread. A wolf pack taking down a fevered elk prevents parasites from reaching the herd. A hawk snatching an infected rodent halts a plague's silent march. Even in the oceans, sharks target wounded or diseased fish, curbing outbreaks before they bloom unseen in the deep. Predation, brutal as it appears, is a form of natural vaccination, selecting for strength, resilience, and genetic health. When humans remove predators, the system weakens. In the American West, the near extinction of wolves led to deer overpopulation, and with it, an explosion of ticks carrying Lyme disease. In Africa, the decline of lions and leopards allowed baboon populations to surge, bringing parasites into closer contact with human settlements. Without predators, prey species lose not only fear, but discipline. They crowd, overgraze, and spread pathogens in densities nature never intended. Yet when apex hunters return, health often follows. The reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone didn't just change landscapes. It restored the invisible web of disease control. Predators are the immune system of ecosystems, decentralized, instinctive, and endlessly vigilant. To lose them is to invite stagnation and sickness. To protect them is to preserve the planet's oldest medicine, the balance between life and death. Beneath the surface of every living thing lies an unseen connection, a vast, invisible web woven from the smallest forms of life. Microbes, viruses, and bacteria move between species like whispers through the forest, linking creatures in ways that defy our imagination. A deer grazes on grass touched by bird droppings. A mosquito feeds on a frog before biting a fox. Ocean currents carry plankton that once shared genetic fragments with whales. Life is not divided by species, but united by exchange. Every breath, every touch, every droplet of rain carries the legacy of a microbial world billions of years old. We tend to fear infection, yet infection is how nature communicates. The same bacteria that cause illness can also strengthen immunity, build ecosystems, and transfer vital genes that fuel evolution itself. In the soil beneath an elephant's footprint live countless microbes, some of which will one day colonize insects, plants, or even us. When birds migrate, they scatter invisible seeds of microbial life across continents, blending the biomes of distant lands. Coral reefs exchange bacterial communities with the fish that swim through them. Forest canopies harbor airborne microbes that drift into clouds, influencing rainfall. The entire planet functions like one breathing organism, its health determined by the balance of its microscopic citizens. When humans disrupt this balance through pollution, antibiotics, or habitat loss, we don't just alter individual species. We tear at the fabric of the microbial web itself. To understand disease, we must first accept connection. Every cough, bloom, and decay is part of one great conversation, a dialogue between species that never ends. Life does not exist in isolation. It exists in communion, written in the language of the invisible. Far from the spotlight, In humid jungles, frozen tundras, and dimly lit labs, a global network of scientists stands guard over the invisible frontier, the boundary between animal illness and human survival. They're the outbreak architects, the disease detectives who read nature's secret messages long before the rest of the world notices the symptoms. Their work begins where civilization ends, in caves filled with bats, wetlands swarming with mosquitoes, and wildlife markets humming with risk. Armed with gloves, vials, and courage, they collect samples from animals most people would never dare to touch. Every drop of blood, every swab of saliva carries clues, genetic codes that might reveal the next pandemic before it happens. In their hands, microscopes become time machines, showing how viruses evolve, migrate, and prepare to leap across species lines. Some of these scientists belong to projects like PREDICT, Global Virome, and EcoHealth Alliance, initiatives mapping the world's unknown pathogens before they find new hosts. They track how bats carry coronaviruses through forest corridors, how birds spread flu strains along migration routes, how rodents harbor viruses that could awaken with a warming climate. Yet their mission is not only scientific, it's moral. They stand between chaos and control, between curiosity and catastrophe. Many face political backlash, funding cuts, or personal danger. Yet they persist because the stakes are planetary. Every outbreak caught early is a tragedy prevented. Every ignored warning is a lesson learned too late. These are the unsung heroes of the microbial world. Not warriors, but listeners, decoding nature's whispers to keep the future intact. The next pandemic is already out there, somewhere in the wild. And these silent guardians are the only ones reading the map. Every time we carve a road through a forest, drain a swamp, or open a new pasture, we do more than reshape the land. We reshape the invisible highways of disease. What once lived deep in wilderness now meets the world we've built. As forests shrink, animals are squeezed into smaller territories, forcing species that never once met to cross paths, trade parasites, and share pathogens. It is in these newly opened scars of the earth where many animal plagues begin. Farms and settlements at the edge of jungles become mixing zones. Pigs near wild boar, chickens near migratory birds, cattle near antelope. The boundaries between wild and domestic blur, and viruses find opportunities in this chaos. A single fruit bat feeding on an orchard can drop saliva or droppings that infect livestock below. The disease may remain in animals for months before anyone notices, until a strange fever burns through a herd or birds begin to die in silence. From the Amazon to Southeast Asia, deforestation acts like a biological earthquake, releasing old pathogens from ancient reservoirs. Trees fall, but something else rises. Invisible clouds of microbes, shaken free from soil and animal hosts. As human footprints press deeper into the wild, the consequences echo far beyond logging trucks and bulldozers. The forest doesn't fight back with claws or teeth. It fights back with evolution, unleashing microscopic armies that adapt faster than we can respond. The truth is uncomfortable. The more we claim of the natural world, the more the natural world reclaims through disease. On farms across the world, animals live side by side. Pigs, chickens, ducks, and cattle, each carrying their own microscopic passengers. These places are the mixing bowls of evolution, where viruses from the wild collide, exchange genes, and become something new. A pig may inhale a bird flu virus from a migrating duck and, days later, a human virus from a farm worker. Inside its body, the two merge. A hybrid pathogen is born with traits no one has seen before. Livestock are bridges between wilderness and humanity. They live close enough to humans for easy infection, yet remain connected to wildlife through open water, feed, and air. Disease moves through this network like an electrical current, silent, fast, and often unnoticed. Foot and mouth disease, swine flu, avian influenza, all began in these invisible crossroads where domestication meets the wild. But the problem isn't just biology, it's density. Industrial farms pack thousands of animals into tight enclosures, creating perfect incubators for mutation. One cough, one sneeze, and a virus can move through a population faster than wine through grass. Antibiotics keep the animals alive, but they also fuel resistance, teaching bacteria to fight back harder each generation. Behind every outbreak headline lies a larger story, one of human ambition and the unintended consequences of our appetite for meat, milk, and eggs. The animals we raise to feed us now stand as sentinels and amplifiers of disease, carrying the echoes of wild infections that once belonged to forests and rivers. In the global web of animal life, the barnyard is not the end of the wild. It's the new frontier. In the narrow alleys of wildlife markets, life and death breathe the same air. Cages stacked upon cages, monkeys beside birds, reptiles beside mammals, all separated by thin bars and shared fear. These markets are more than places of trade. They are biological reactors where viruses jump species with terrifying ease. Each animal brings its own hidden microbiome, its own ancient viral hitchhikers. In the chaos of blood, feathers, and breath, those microbes find new hosts, mutating faster than the human eye can follow. Here, a civet sneezes near a chicken. A trader wipes blood from a counter and handles a bat without gloves. Each simple act, ordinary and unremarkable, could be the spark of something catastrophic. For decades, these markets have supplied local economies and traditions, but beneath their commerce lies a global risk. The boundaries that once separated species are erased, replaced by the constant hum of exchange and contact. Scientists studying these environments call them evolution's accelerators. When viruses from multiple animals mix in the same space, the chances of mutation multiply. The result is not just one sick animal. It's the creation of a virus that may someday threaten entire ecosystems. Many of the world's most dangerous outbreaks trace back to these crowded intersections, where human curiosity and hunger collide with the natural world's oldest defense mechanism, adaptation. Every sound, a flutter, a cough, a hiss, is a reminder that nature's code is rewriting itself in real time. Within these walls, species don't just trade bodies, they trade futures. And in the exchange, the next plague may already be waiting. Deep in the jungles and savannas, far from laboratories and headlines, the first encounters with emerging plagues often begin with hunters and traders. They are not villains, but survivors, people who live where opportunity is measured in meat, fur, and risk. A hunter tracks a monkey, a bat, or a wild boar, unaware that the animal he pursues may carry a virus that has slept quietly in its blood for centuries. The kill is swift, but the exposure is silent. A drop of blood, a cut from a knife, a moment of contact, and nature's boundaries are crossed. In the open-air bushmeat markets of Central Africa, in the wet forests of Southeast Asia, the trade continues daily. Millions of animals captured, handled, and sold. Each transaction is a small experiment in viral evolution. Pathogens that once circulated in isolated animal populations are now introduced to entirely new hosts. Hunters who carry their catch to villages may unknowingly carry something else, a passenger too small to see, yet powerful enough to reshape the world. Researchers who work alongside these communities understand the paradox. These people depend on the wild to survive, yet their survival also fuels the emergence of new diseases. Education and alternative livelihoods are slowly changing this balance, but poverty and tradition run deep. Still, hope persists in initiatives that teach safe handling, vaccination of domestic animals, and the value of conservation. Behind every outbreak, there is a story of connection between human hands and wild lives, between hunger and survival. The hunters and traders stand at the threshold between two worlds, one of nature's ancient design and another of human need. And in their footsteps, the path of the next epidemic may already be forming. In nature, there are no borders. The air doesn't stop at fences, and the wind doesn't ask for passports. When animals move, their microbes move with them, across mountains, deserts, and oceans. A bird leaving Siberia may carry a virus that lands months later in an African wetland. A sea turtle can travel thousands of kilometers with a fungus clinging to its shell. Even whales, the giants of the sea, carry bacteria in their skin that drift from one ocean to another. The invisible passengers of migration bind the planet together in ways we rarely notice. Modern life amplifies this connection. Cargo ships, airplanes, and trade routes turn local infections into global travelers. Rats aboard ships, insects hidden in crates, or exotic pets smuggled across borders all serve as couriers of contagion. Each transport route becomes a new chapter in the story of disease, one that no longer belongs to any single continent or species. The outbreak that begins in a remote wetland today can appear in another hemisphere tomorrow. Scientists call this the ecology of movement, a web that links animal migrations with human transportation, merging ancient natural cycles with the relentless motion of modern trade. When migratory birds stop in farms or cities, they bridge wild and domestic worlds. When livestock feed on contaminated water, the cycle tightens. The planet's highways of infection are now endless and intertwined. In the age of globalization, an animal plague is never truly local. It is planetary, carried on wings, waves, and wheels. The world breathes as one ecosystem, and with every breath, the microbes drift farther, faster, and deeper into the fabric of life. For centuries, animal plagues spread unseen, invisible forces that move through forests, oceans, and skies faster than human understanding. But today, science has built eyes powerful enough to see the invisible. Across the planet, satellites watch migration routes, drones scan deforestation zones, and GPS collars trace the journeys of elephants, bats, and birds. Each data point tells a story, a heartbeat in the map of disease. What once seemed random chaos now reveals itself as a pattern, a rhythm that scientists are finally learning to read. In high-security laboratories, genetic sequencing machines decode viruses molecule by molecule, revealing how they mutate, spread, and adapt. Computer models powered by artificial intelligence can now predict where the next outbreak might emerge, not just in human cities, but deep in the wild. Researchers layer climate data, animal movement, and microbial samples to create digital landscapes of risk. Each colored line and glowing dot on their screens represents lives, animal and human, connected by the same microscopic thread. But technology is not just about detection. It's about prevention. Early warning systems now alert rangers and veterinarians when disease signals spike in a region. Satellite heat maps can spot mass animal die-offs before humans even arrive. Drones deliver medical supplies to remote wildlife sanctuaries where outbreaks begin. The war against invisible enemies is no longer fought in the dark. Through science, humanity has given itself a new kind of vision, one that peers through the veil of nature, seeking not to conquer it, but to understand its design. In the silent hum of data servers and the whir of satellite feeds, the Earth whispers its health and technology listens. Far from the sterile silence of laboratories, there are men and women who face the raw reality of animal disease every day. They work in swamps, jungles, and savannas, veterinarians, wildlife rangers, ecologists, and field researchers who walk into the unknown armed with only gloves, courage, and knowledge. These are the field warriors, the first to see the signs of sickness, the first to respond when the balance of nature begins to tilt. They track dying herds under a burning sun, collect blood from restless animals, and carry samples through mud and rain to makeshift field labs. Every touch is a risk. Every mistake could be fatal. Yet they continue because understanding one infected animal can mean preventing 1,000 more. They are the bridge between wild ecosystems and human safety, a living shield standing between outbreak and containment. In Africa, mobile veterinary teams monitor antelopes for foot and mouth. In Southeast Asia, researchers crawl into bat caves to collect viral samples by hand. In the Arctic, scientists brave blizzards to track bird migrations that could carry avian influenza southward. Their stories rarely make headlines, yet their work shapes the invisible front line of global health. Each syringe, each notebook, each vial of blood represents humanity's dialogue with nature, not of dominance, but of understanding. These field warriors do not fight the wild. They listen to it. And in their data, sweat, and sacrifice, they carry a single truth. To protect ourselves, we must first protect the animals who share our world. When a strange illness appears in a distant farm or forest, before the world even hears a whisper, global networks are already listening. Behind the calm surface of daily life operates a massive web of surveillance, a collaboration among the World Organization for Animal Health, OIE, the World Health Organization, WHO, and the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. Together, they form the One Health Triad, a united front built on one simple truth. Human health, animal health, and the environment are inseparable. Each morning, data streams from thousands of points, wildlife sanctuaries, border checkpoints, veterinary clinics, and research labs, feeding into global databases that track every cough, every outbreak, every anomaly. A poultry farm in Vietnam reports dying chickens. Within hours, specialists in Geneva, Paris, and Manila receive alerts. Satellites watch for mass animal deaths from above, while AI models predict how the disease could spread with changing weather or migration. It's a race against time fought not with bullets, but with information. The OIE coordinates animal disease standards, who monitors human symptoms that might trace back to animals. FAO ensures food safety and livestock resilience. Together, they're not just reacting, they're anticipating the next outbreak before it crosses species, borders, or oceans. Yet even with this network, the system is fragile. Delayed reports, political hesitation, and underfunded surveillance can allow a spark to grow into a wildfire. In conference rooms filled with glowing maps and digital dashboards, scientists and policymakers act as sentinels, reading the pulse of the planet in real time. They are humanity's global immune system, scanning the horizon for invisible threats. Every alert, every response, every shared data set is part of a silent promise that the next pandemic, if it comes, will not catch us unprepared. For every outbreak caught in time, there are others that slip through the cracks, silent, unseen, and devastating. When surveillance systems falter, the cost is not measured only in dollars, but in lives, ecosystems, and lost trust. In many regions, underfunded veterinary services and outdated laboratories struggle to keep pace with emerging diseases. Reports arrive late. Field samples spoil before reaching a lab. A single missed signal can spiral into catastrophe. In 2014, the world watched Ebola erupt across West Africa, a virus believed to have jumped from bats to humans long before anyone noticed. By the time international aid arrived, it was too late for thousands. Livestock markets closed, wildlife vanished, and fragile economies collapsed. The same story echoes in the avian influenza outbreaks that swept through poultry farms in Southeast Asia and Europe. Farmers hid sick birds, fearing financial ruin, while the virus continued to spread unchecked. Complacency can be deadly. After a major epidemic fades, attention and funding often fade with it. Laboratories are left without reagents. Data systems go unmaintained, and the next outbreak seeds itself quietly in the background noise of daily life. Nature doesn't wait for bureaucracy. It doesn't follow budgets or election cycles. Every delay, every neglected report, is an open door for the next contagion to walk through. The truth is harsh but clear. Vigilance must be constant. Disease surveillance is not a switch to be turned on only in crisis. It's a living shield that must never sleep. And when that shield cracks, the consequences ripple far beyond one country or one species. They remind us that our safety is only as strong as the weakest link in the world's watchtower. When an animal disease strikes, the first losses are visible: sick herds, empty farms, closed markets. But beneath those headlines lies a vast network of invisible costs that ripple through societies for years. One outbreak can shatter rural economies, erase livelihoods, and ignite hunger far from the initial infection site. A virus doesn't just infect bodies, it infects systems. When foot-and-mouth disease hit the United Kingdom in 2001, more than 6 million animals were culled. The economic toll exceeded £8 billion, but the emotional toll was beyond calculation. Farmers who had raised their herds for generations watched their life's work vanish in smoke from mass-burn pits. In Southeast Asia, outbreaks of African swine fever wiped out entire pig industries, forcing smallholders into poverty and driving up global meat prices. Every animal lost is a job lost, a family displaced, a dream erased. And the costs don't stop at the farm. Tourism collapses when wildlife is threatened. Trade barriers rise, food prices spike, and governments pour billions into containment, cleanup, and compensation. Even nations untouched by the disease feel the economic aftershocks through disrupted supply chains and shifting markets. A single microscopic pathogen can move money faster than any financial crisis. But perhaps the greatest cost is the erosion of trust between farmers and governments, between consumers and the food they eat, between nations sharing fragile ecosystems. When a society begins to fear its own animals, something fundamental breaks. The fight against animal plagues is not only a biological battle. It's an economic and moral one, testing how much we value the creatures and communities that sustain us. In the age of globalization, diseases no longer move at the speed of animals. They move at the speed of trade. Cargo ships, livestock trucks, and even airplanes have become invisible arteries through which pathogens flow. A single infected chicken, pig, or bat can hitch a ride across continents without a passport, crossing borders faster than any quarantine can react. These are the silent travelers of the modern world. Unseen passengers in crates, containers, and cargo holds. Every year, millions of live animals are shipped for food, breeding, or trade. At ports and border crossings, veterinary inspectors race to check health certificates and screen for symptoms. But viruses don't wait for paperwork. They can cling to animal fur, contaminated feed, or even the soles of boots. Once inside a new country, all it takes is one contact, one drop of saliva, one sneeze, one careless disposal for a chain reaction to begin. History has shown how mobility magnifies risk. The spread of African swine fever through Eastern Europe followed a trail of trucks and contaminated pork products. Foot-and-mouth disease once jumped oceans via unprocessed animal feed. Even migratory birds, natural travelers, can amplify outbreaks along their flight paths, connecting wetlands thousands of miles apart in a single season. We live in a world where global convenience has outpaced biological caution. The same systems that feed us, employ us, and connect us also create highways for pathogens. To stop animal plagues in this interconnected world, vigilance must extend beyond borders, into every shipment, every feedlot, every warehouse. Because in a world this connected, the next outbreak might already be on its way, hidden in the cargo of tomorrow. Long before humans built trade routes, nature had its own, invisible highways carved by instinct and survival. Every year, billions of wild animals migrate across continents. Birds tracing ancient flyways, caribou crossing frozen tundras, bats swirling across tropical skies. These migrations are among Earth's most breathtaking spectacles, but also its most efficient networks for disease movement. When animals travel, so do their microbes. And what begins in one corner of the world can quietly echo across another. Take migratory birds, for instance. A mallard infected with avian influenza in Siberia can fly thousands of kilometers, resting in wetlands shared by ducks, geese, and shorebirds in China, Korea, or Japan, leaving behind invisible viral footprints in the water. From there, the virus leaps to poultry farms, then to global markets. The same happens with wildebeests in Africa, whose great migration can carry foot-and-mouth disease between regions in mere weeks. Even fruit bats, the natural reservoirs for many deadly viruses, travel vast distances each night, linking isolated ecosystems through a chain of contact. Migration itself isn't the villain. It's a marvel of evolution. But when these wild corridors intersect with farms, cities, and trade, they become bridges between wilderness and civilization. Deforestation, habitat loss, and climate change are now pushing animals into new routes, forcing species that never met before to cross paths and exchange pathogens. In nature's grand journey, a single shift in migration can redraw the map of global disease. Every wing beat, every hoof print, every echo of life across these wild corridors reminds us that we live in a shared biological web, one that doesn't respect borders or walls. The challenge isn't to stop migration, but to understand it, to monitor the rhythms of the wild before the next invisible traveler takes flight. As the planet warms, the boundaries that once kept diseases in check are melting away. Climate change isn't just transforming landscapes, it's rewriting the geography of infection. When temperatures rise, rain patterns shift, and ecosystems break apart, the rules that once governed pathogens begin to blur. A virus that once thrived in tropical humidity now finds new life in temperate zones. Parasites that once died in winter now survive through the year. Nature's thermostat is broken, and with it, the delicate balance between hosts and their microbes. Mosquitoes carrying Rift Valley fever and West Nile virus are expanding their reach, moving higher into mountain valleys and further toward the poles. Ticks that spread Lyme disease now survive in regions that were once too cold. Drought forces animals closer to shrinking waterholes, concentrating them and their diseases into smaller spaces. Meanwhile, floods wash pathogens from farms into rivers, where they travel downstream to infect wildlife and livestock alike. Climate change acts as a global accelerator, transforming small sparks of infection into blazing epidemics. But perhaps the most dangerous shift is the unpredictability. Ecosystems are adapting faster than we can study them. Bats alter their roosting patterns, birds change their migrations, and insects adjust their breeding cycles. Every change opens new pathways for diseases to jump, not out of malice, but out of survival. The world is becoming a moving puzzle where each piece, animal, human, and climate, affects the others in ways we're only beginning to understand. The fight against animal plagues is no longer fought only in labs or farms, but in forests, oceans, and skies reshaped by a changing planet. Because when the climate changes, so do the plagues, and in that transformation lies the greatest challenge of our time, learning to adapt as fast as nature does. Every outbreak has a patient zero, but not every patient is an animal. More often than not, the spark that ignites an epidemic begins with us. Humanity's relentless expansion into forests, the rise of industrial farming, illegal wildlife trade, and unregulated markets have all turned the planet into a living laboratory for new diseases. We build roads through jungles, cutting paths where none existed, forcing wild species into contact with livestock, and livestock into contact with people. In that shrinking distance, viruses find their bridges. In Africa and Asia, deforestation to make way for plantations and pastures drives bats and primates closer to human settlements. In the Amazon, fires destroy habitats, scattering wildlife into farms where pathogens mix freely. Meanwhile, wet markets, where wild and domestic animals are kept in cramped cages, become the perfect melting pots for viral evolution. Our hunger for convenience, for meat, for space, fuels an invisible chain reaction. Every bulldozer, every shipment, every meal becomes part of the equation. Industrial farming magnifies the risk further. Tens of thousands of animals confined in a single facility create a viral playground, a place where pathogens can mutate, adapt, and leap between hosts faster than we can detect them. Antibiotic overuse adds another layer of danger, breeding resistant bacteria that no medicine can stop. And when these farms connect to global supply chains, a local infection can become a global crisis overnight. We often talk about nature fighting back, but nature isn't fighting, it's reacting. The diseases we fear are not punishments. They're consequences. They are the biological reflections of our own behavior mirrored through the lives of other creatures. If we want to stop the next animal plague, the first step isn't just in laboratories or field work. It's in rethinking how we live, produce, and share this planet with everything that breathes. In the end, every virus, every outbreak, every loss brings us back to a simple truth. We all share one home. The idea of One Health is not a slogan. It is a survival blueprint. It recognizes that the health of humans, animals, and the environment are threads of the same fabric. When one frays, the rest follow. Protecting wildlife means protecting ourselves. Safeguarding ecosystems means stabilizing the invisible barriers that hold back disease. And valuing every living being means valuing the delicate balance that sustains life on Earth. The future of prevention won't depend on isolated efforts, but on unity. Veterinarians, doctors, ecologists, farmers, and policymakers must work not in parallel, but in partnership. Surveillance must be local and global, scientific and social. Education must reach every village, every farm, every community that lives close to animals. Technology can amplify our reach, but empathy must guide our actions. Because every data point, every vaccine, every early warning only matters if we act with shared responsibility. Imagine a world where every deforestation plan includes a health impact study, where farms are designed with both profit and biosecurity in mind, where wildlife is respected not as a resource, but as a vital ally in the ecosystem. That is the vision of One Health, not a distant dream, but a necessary transformation. The choice is not between saving nature or saving ourselves. It is, and always has been, both or neither. Animal plagues are not just nature's warning signs. They are opportunities to listen, to learn, and to change before the next wave comes. If we embrace the truth that every life on Earth is connected, then maybe, just maybe, the next time the wild whispers of sickness, humanity will finally be ready to answer with wisdom instead of fear.